In verse 12, Solomon makes an interesting point. He says, whoever derides his neighbor has no sense, but the one who has understanding holds their tongue. A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret. Now, I think I need to nuance this a little bit to kind of break it down so that we get the right concept behind what he's saying. That bottom line, when he says a person derides their neighbors, what he's talking about is when you really gossip about somebody, and the gossip may be in fact true. You may be saying something that factually is correct, but what it does is it serves the purpose of diminishing that other person in the eyes of the third person. So when I'm sitting around gossiping about somebody and saying, well, you know, they don't do this and they don't do that, and they've got this weakness and that fault, what I'm not doing is giving them any kind of constructive help, because if I want to help that person, I'm going to share with them directly what I see and hopefully do it in a gracious way so that they see it not as a tearing down of their worth as a person, but something that they can build upon and incorporate into their life. But he's talking about people who simply have no sensibility to the needs of others. They're not loving their neighbor, and so they just talk very cavalierly and critically about their neighbor. But a wise man, he said, doesn't feel he needs to say everything he sees. The wise man may see a weakness in you, and he prayerfully asks, God, show me how to communicate that and when to communicate that to this other person. And then we can go and be a helper to that person because they have given us an opportunity or an opening. Many times people will just simply say, I'm having a hard time. Can you give me advice how to change the dynamics of my life? And that's the kind of person that you want to be. You want to be able to hold your tongue because you're not trying to settle a score. You're not trying to settle the score, but you're trying to encourage them to grow in a more positive way. And that's why we add in the second part in verse 13 that a gossip is a person who betrays confidence. When somebody comes to you and says, listen, I have this issue in my life, and it's not a flattering thing. Usually when people share things with me, that it's not things they consider to be flattering, and they pray to God, I'm not going to make it as part of my sermon. They say basically that trustworthy person can keep a secret. Now, there is a caveat here. We aren't supposed to keep every secret, especially if that secret is about how somebody else is going to be hurt or harmed. And that's outside of that link. So if we find out some information that's going to be harmful or dangerous to somebody else, we need to be forward and say that to them. I mean, for example, if I know somebody is going to commit a crime and people are going to suffer as a consequence of that crime, I'm not going to keep that to myself. In fact, I'm going to probably tell the person who shared that with me that I'm going to rat you out to the authorities. I'm going to report this, that what you shared with me, because what you're doing is wrong and it's going to be hurtful. So there's this balance here. I find some people will keep secrets about bad behavior, sometimes in homes where they know about some kinds of abuse and different things that are going on. And they say, well, my loyalty is my family and I don't want to betray my family, or I don't want to dishonor my parents or my father or my mother or whoever it is. And that's a mistake, really. It's missing the whole point, because sharing that is not gossiping, unless, of course, you put it out on the internet for everybody in the world to see. But you need to find the people who need to have that information and who can act upon it in a helpful way. And that's where we become people who are basically trustworthy. We keep a secret when it does no good to share the secret. And I don't mean to scare anybody. I know a lot of things about a lot of people that have been shared with me over the years that they ask me not to share, and I see no value in sharing them, so I'm not going to share them. So those of you who may be listening and wondering, wow, is he going to share that? No, because I want to be a trustworthy person. And if there's no value in sharing that, because you and I talked about it, then I'm not going to do that. But that's, I think, a critical way that we need to navigate through many of these relational issues and not open ourselves up to just having something, needing something to fill a awkward conversation or a silent moment. Speak the truth in love, speak it accurately, but don't misrepresent something. And if you don't need to identify someone else, then don't identify them. You can share concepts and ideas and dynamics that you're aware of, but you don't necessarily need to out that person unless it's absolutely necessary.